Hello people from all over the world, it's me Elsha and I'm back with video number 3. As you might already seen in the title of this video, this is the second video of the Clearly Superior series and I'm really excited about this one. Today I'm going to take a look at the two biggest kids and youth novel series of all time, Percy Jackson and Harry Potter, and I'm going to try to determine one's superiority. This battle is going to be a two-part series because there are a lot of things I need to evaluate, and I think it's better to make it two 15 minutes long videos than one 30-minute one. Like always, I'm going to be accompanied by Bob, who will gladly assist me in making these videos as enjoyable as possible. And here's the short recap of how the series works. I will let two series or movies or manga or anything battle each other for superiority by comparing them in different categories for with which they will get points. After the main round, there will be bonus points, and after all the points have been distributed, we will finally have an answer to the question of who is clearly superior. Harry Potter is a book series written by the British author J.K. Rowling. The first part of the series, Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone or Philosopher's Stone, depending on which country you live in, was published on June 26, 1997. This series includes 7 books, which are called Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets, Harry Potter and the Prison of Azkaban, Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire, Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix, Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince, and the 2007 published Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows. Percy Jackson and the Olympians, The Lightning Thief, is the first book out of a 5-part series written by Rick Riordan. I hope that's how you say it. I don't know. And was published in 2005. The other 4 books are called Percy Jackson and the Olympians, The Sea of Monsters, Percy Jackson and the Olympians of the Titan Curse, Percy Jackson and the Olympians, The Battle of the Labyrinth, and the final one, Percy Jackson and the Last Olympian, which was published in 2009. The first category of this battle is called plot. And for that, I'm going to briefly explain the plot of both series, because people need to know. Every Harry Potter book revolves around Harry Potter. Well, who would have thought? A young boy who gets told by a big hairy guy named Hagrid that he's a wizard and that he should come to Hogwarts, School of Witchcraft and Wizardry, to learn being a wizard. So he also finds out that his parents were killed by an evil wizard named Voldemort, and that he might come back to continue with his evilness, I guess, and that he might need to stop him from doing that. So in the first book, the 11-year-old befriends a know-it-all girl named Hermione and the nice but rather useless-seeming boy Ron, and they try to survive the crazy days at Hogwarts, which ultimately leads to them wanting to find the Sorcerer's Stone, and Harry fights Voldemort. In the second book, they come back to school after facing some slight issues along the way, trying to figure out the mystery behind people being turned into stone, and the book ends with Harry fighting Voldemort again. In their third year, a killer escaped prison and is lurking around the shadows. Harry and his friends find out that he has a connection to Voldemort and that he is partly responsible for the death of his parents, which is why Harry makes it his mission to find him and kill him, I guess. I don't know if he really wants to do that, that's just what he says. The book ends with Harry not fighting Voldemort, but with a plot twist and me being scared of the full moon for a couple of weeks. In his 4th year, Harry gets unwillingly chosen to be participant in a dangerous wizard school contest called the Tri-Wizard Tournament, which concludes with Harry fighting Voldemort. Bruh. The 5th book focuses more on school life. Harry and his friends need to study for their OWL exams, but also need to handle the new evil defense against the dark arts teacher and find a prophecy which ultimately reveals Harry to be the chosen one to murder Voldemort. And the book ends with Harry fighting Voldemort again. You could have assumed that he would have already done it by now, but I guess he is not as skilled as people might have thought he would be. In book 6, Harry tries to get his hands on a specific memory from a new teacher to get to know Voldemort a bit better and to figure out about stuff that is a spoiler, so I'm not going to name it. The book actually doesn't end with Harry fighting Voldemort, but with him and a familiar face, which reveals his true nature and causes some serious trouble at Hogwarts. And then we come to the last book, which revolves around the destruction of the earlier mentioned spoilers and climaxes with a big battle at Hogwarts where bad fights evil and Harry fights Voldemort. Whoa, that was so unexpected. Okay, so as you can see, the basic structure of every single Harry Potter book is pretty repetitive, and that doesn't mean it isn't fun to read or anything. I'm just saying that it's not changing the villain or not raising the number of antagonists can become quite boring after a while. Also, almost everything they go through is at Hogwarts itself, which is a separated place from our world. It gives the reader a little distance to the story and makes the reader wish to be part of the world rather than feeling that they're already part of it, if that makes sense. And these 2 points are the reason why the Percy Jackson series has the upper hand in this category, and I'm going to show you why. So over the course of the whole series, the 12-year-old Percy Jackson finds out that he's a demigod and that he's the son of a special god, which I'm not going to name. So he's attacked by monsters of Greek mythology, gets introduced to Camp Half-Blood, finds out his best friend Grover is a satyr, like a half-human, half-goat type of person. And he needs to go onto countless quests with his friends in order to save Camp Half-Blood. During his quests, which include returning Zeus' lightning, finding the Golden Fleece, fighting Titans, and running through a magical labyrinth, he finds out that the Titan King will rise and is determined to destroy the Olympians and every living being on Earth, which is why Percy, a 12-year-old, just needs to destroy him. That's the fact. I mean, he isn't 12 when he fights him, but still, it's kind of weird. Every book in the Percy Jackson series deals with many different types of evil monsters and different antagonists. It is true that Kronos, the main villain of the series, is already hinted at in book 1, but he isn't directly participating in any face-to-face battle until the last book. And this is why I'd say the build-up in Percy Jackson is better than in Harry Potter. Harry fights the main villain in nearly every book, which is why the next book starts off a little anticlimactic, which isn't the case in Percy Jackson. It is really hard to stop reading the books of Percy Jackson and the Olympian Saga because you know the main villain is still out there somewhere and we don't know what he's going to do next. With the Harry Potter books, every story, and with that every year that is ending at Hogwarts, the book has its own little conclusion. So the story, with all its anti-magic rules and hidden places, clearly separates the adventures that Harry and his friends go through at Hogwarts and the Wizarding World from the Muggle world. And it seems like Harry leaves the Wizarding World at the end of each book year, at each school year, and everything evil and bad and dangerous just disappears. Which certainly isn't the case, but it just feels like that for most of the time. In Percy Jackson, there aren't any rules that forbid demigods to use their powers because they need to protect themselves, which is also something I'm going to talk about in the second part of the series, where we'll talk about the logic in both series. But anyways, their adventures never end. Sure, we jump a little forward in time when changing books, but it feels like an overall story that never ended because there wasn't any big battle against the main boss. Just saying. So all in all, both stories are interesting and funny fantasy coming-of-age youth stories, but because Harry Potter's is kind of split into parts and isn't an overall continuing story per se, I think it is easier to stay interested in the Percy Jackson story, which is why it gets the first point of the evening. Yay! Fun party! We will continue now with the second point. After we've talked about the plot, I'm going to examine the different characters of the two series. And just to make this clear, I will not be talking about every character there is combined in the 12 books for, I guess, obvious reasons. I'm going to compare some characters that have an impact on the story and that have somewhat of an equivalent within the other series. So let's start off with the main characters and the friends. So on the left side we have 12 to 17-year-old Harry James Potter, orphan, wizard, chosen one, and good friend. Then we have his best red-headed friend, Ronald Weasley, who is a chess genius and a little lazy when it comes to studying. And we have the smartest young witch existing, Hermione Granger, who gets bullied for being a muggle and studies a lot and is, in my opinion, really annoying. But that doesn't count. On the right side, we have the 12 to 16-year-old Percy Jackson, demigod, and one of the three, and might be the chosen one, and is also a good friend. His best friend is the clumsy Grover, who is dreaming to get his searching license and of finding the god Pan. And the last of the trio is Annabeth, daughter of Athena, wise, smart, and strategic girl who also needs to learn to not look down on people sometimes. To be honest, the main characters are pretty much the same in terms of quality. I mean, Annabeth is definitely more useful to the story than Hermione, but because she is only helping the group with her intellect, but also with her exceptional combat skills, which I don't think Hermione can compete with, to be honest. Ron, on the other hand, is better in quotation marks as a friend character because he actually helps Harry with his struggles, and he has a bit more not screen time, but page time than Grover, who in the second book is the one who needs to be rescued. Like, what? How about not being a burden for the main character? Let's have some looks at the other characters. So we have a wise old dude who knows more about the protagonist than he himself and doesn't tell him, even though it makes his life easier. We have Headmaster Dumbledore and the Centaur, I think that's how you say it, Shira. Then we have the school bully, Draco Malfoy, and we have Claire's daughter of Aries. We've got an anti-protagonist guy who has an unexplained grudge against the protagonist. And this comparison is lacking, but I'm going to do it anyway. So we have the god of wine, Dionysus, and the potions professor, Professor Snape. And then we of course have the main villain, one side, Dark Wizard Voldemort, and on the other side, Titan King and Lord of the Time, Kronos. We also have like friends that they hang out with, which I've chosen to compare Neville Longbottom and Nico D'Angelo and Talia Grace just because they're there. And we have the secondary antagonists like monsters and Death Eaters and all. To be fair, all the characters are quite similar, and it's very hard to decide which series has the better characters because of the narrative perspective. In Percy Jackson, you automatically feel close to Percy because it's a first-person narrator. In Harry Potter, it's a third person. But I think I'll give this point to Harry Potter because the characters just have more time to shine. Because most of the plot takes place in a specific locations where the main characters are constantly surrounded by the same type of people who are automatically given a bit more depth than the ones in Percy Jackson. Most of the plot in Percy Jackson is quest, which is focused on 3 people, which puts the other characters in the background most of the time. And with that, Harry Potter ties with Jackson, and it is going to be very interesting. Just a disclaimer, I would have picked Harry Potter personally because it has Draco Malfoy, which is the best character in Harry Potter in my opinion, and I might have not named a white pink stuffed bear after him when I was 8 years old. I mean, come on dude, he gets punched in the face because he couldn't stop talking, and he got turned into a ferret. A ferret! That dude is a legend and no one convinced me otherwise. So let's come to the last category of this video, which is world building. When it comes to fictional stories, world building is an important part of making everything that is being told more believable. It should also tribute to the reader's ability to picture the surroundings of the characters and to understand their actions. J.K. Rowling and Rick Riordan took two different approaches when it came to creating a setting for the individual stories. The Harry Potter universe, which is also called Wizarding World of Harry Potter, as the name suggests, is a world in which magic and magical beings exist. She took a popular approach when it came to world building. She created her own society with its own rules and morals and laws, which mimic our own society. But as I said before, it is separated from our world, which leaves the reader longing to be a part of it. This leads them to continue reading the next book. And I have to say, I also enjoy the Wizarding World, and I can proudly say that I have imagined being there a lot of times. But, big but, I did that because all of the adventures and the Hogwarts setting, which was explained very well in my opinion, but not because of the world in general. There are so many things that don't get explained or are only hinted at. For example, if there's only one wizarding school in all of Great Britain and the amount of students in Hogwarts is approximately 500, where do all the other students go? Are they all homeschooling or are they sent abroad? And if they are sent abroad, where do all the natives go to school? Then there are only like 7 wizard schools in the whole world. Do they just not have a lot of children? I mean, I'm so confused. And what happens if they finish school? Do all wizards just start working for the ministry or the press because there are no big wizarding cities with a lot of stores and some career paths are completely erased because of other species? I mean, no wizard will be working at Gringotts, the wizarding bank, because it's run by goblins. And if they are spelt which bake bread, no one needs a bakery anymore, just hypothetically. And this is only a fraction of unanswered questions that the world needs an answer to. What happens if a muggle would come to Hogwarts and ignores the warning placed for the muggles? Would that person just straight run up into invisible barriers and break their nose? I mean, I could go on for days, but I won't because I don't want to bore anyone. So Rick Riordan did something very intelligent when it came to world building. He simply didn't create a new world. Genius move! What he did was, he took our world as it is, then looked at Greek mythology and thought about the things that wouldn't work in our world, like humongous minotaurs attacking 12-year-olds in the streets, for example. And then he figured out ways to make the unawareness of normal humans logical. And with that, the concept of explaining a world just goes out of the window. In Percy Jackson, many elements of Greek mythology are explained, but there isn't any trouble of thinking about if the majority of uneducated young wizards are going to be able to become full members of the Wizarding Society or something. The world building point goes to the Percy Jackson series, because I think it is important to only take on something as big as you can handle it. Rick Riordan didn't take the time to invent alternate universes with different physics or something, but he used our own real world and managed to turn it into something much more exciting. We as readers are as close to the action as the heroes themselves, just without realizing it, which doesn't happen very often in fantasy novels. J.K. Rowling in her Wizarding World could have easily gotten the point if she'd just taken a bit more time to actually plan the whole world out and avoid these plot holes within the world of Harry Potter. If I was only going to review creative aspect and the fantasy put into the story and the world building, Harry Potter would have gotten the point for sure. But I, as a real scientist, can never ignore clear facts. Now we've reached the end of the first part of the battle between Percy Jackson and Harry Potter, and for now, Percy Jackson leads with 2-1, but we have many more categories to come, and we cannot make any assumptions on who the winner is just yet. The next part will come out within the next couple of days or so, at least I'm planning to do it. I hope I can manage it. So stay tuned for the epic reveal of which is clearly superior. Also, please like and subscribe. if you like these type of videos, and if you don't, just do it as well, because I need you all to make my videos more popular. Just create accounts for your dog, your cat, or your pet hamster or something, and let them subscribe to me as well. I don't know, but that's it for the video, and see you next time.